Hello and welcome to the World According to Christy podcast. I'm your host, Christy Demetrakis, author of Faith to Conquer Fear, Inspiration to Achieve Your Dreams, and Amazon bestseller, Faith to Conquer Fear, The Journey. I am so glad you are here. I'm glad to be here. I'm excited about this podcast. If you have been following the podcast and listened to my trailer, what I share with you is that you're going to hear something a little bit different every week. And some weeks you're going to hear me pontificating. Other weeks you're going to hear from some of my old friends from my vintage Faith to Conquer Fear radio show, as well as my Sell Your Message radio show. And then other weeks you're going to hear from some of my new friends. And that is what we're doing today. So today I have with me Taren Kinnebrew. And Taren, and I'm not going to give you a whole long bio because it's all going to come out as we have our conversation today, but Taren is the CEO of Sweet Petit Desserts in Cincinnati. And because she is the ultimate businesswoman and entrepreneur, which you will hear, she has also just launched, she's a co-owner of Cream and Sugar Coffee House, also in Cincinnati. And I just can't wait for you to hear about her story, because for those of you who have aspired or have any aspiration of owning your own business, or what does it take to get started, and how do I make this leap from what I do today to where she is today, I think you will be absolutely inspired. I love her story. I've listened to her talk several times, and that's why I was so excited to have her as a part of my podcast. So now she's mine, at least for a few minutes. But anywho, so let's get started. Again, we have Taren Kinnebrew. And I am so excited to have you, Taren. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. What an honor.
You are very welcome. Yeah, of course. You were one of the first people I thought about when I started to relaunch this podcast. You were one of the first people I thought of. So it's just fitting that we would be sitting here today. So I'm so glad to have you. But you know what? Let's get right into it. I want to first start because we're going to talk about your journey. From where you've been all the way up, and we're going to do it in a real short window of time. But tell us about you personally, just so folks can get to know you.
Yeah, so I am a wife and a mother to one 18-year-old daughter. So that's who I am at the core. Those are my two main roles, being a wife and obviously being a mother. And I am also an entrepreneur. So this hasn't been an easy journey, but it has been, I would say it's been a ride of a lifetime, and I would not change it. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Well, that's a great setup. Well, let's talk about the journey. What's your background? What's your work experience?
So my background, I am an Army veteran. I'm a college graduate of North Carolina Central University, so HBCU pride.
Uh-huh.
And
I'll take that. I'm a Tar Heel, but it's okay. I'll let it go.
And I love the Tar Heels. Yes. I have a degree in information systems, and then I have a minor in accounting. So I've always been a numbers person. I love business, and I just had to figure out, what I wanted to do. So in my corporate life, I was a programmer designer. So my last corporate job actually, which was a job that I felt I could not do, but I figured if I could do sales, to me, which I think is the hardest job to do, then I could do pretty much any job. So I have certainly lived a full life, I think, and I'm a person that likes to take risks and change it up a little bit. And so, but for the last almost 11 years, I've dedicated my life to being an entrepreneur. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that is quite the background. Army veteran, information systems, data, and now baking. So you've got the whole left brain thing going here.
Yes.
You got this right brain thing going. And I love that you mentioned if you can do sales. My background is sales. I have been in sales my whole career. So you're exactly right. If you can sell, you can do just about anything. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, to me, it's the hardest job to do, because you're having to convince people to spend their money on something that you're selling. And it may not necessarily be a need for a person, but you have to convince them that it is a need, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I did that probably for like almost 3 years, and then I left corporate, and I have not looked back. I've missed it somewhat, but I don't miss sales in that way. I like sales. I like sales on this end because I can really convince people to buy what I'm selling. So.
Okay, I mean, that is the heart of entrepreneurship. Really, is anything, and I think that's the thing that people, when people think about entrepreneurship or just selling in general, many times we have that mental perspective of a used car salesman, right? That sleazy, and that's not all sales. It's
That's right.
retail sales. You've got consumer packaged goods sales. I mean, you've got all different types of sales. But even if you are the head of your PTA and you're trying to get a fundraiser established, you're selling. As you're trying to get other parents on board, that's selling. And a lot of people don't think about that. We're selling all the time.
That's right.
So let's back up for just a hair, because you kind of blew past, so I just left corporate America. Let's come on back. Why did you leave corporate America?
Yeah, so one of the main reasons I left was because I needed to take some time off and be a mom to my daughter Brooke, and I couldn't go back to being an IT person, because at the time when I had her, or when I was pregnant with her, we had been through 9/11, and a lot of the IT jobs had kind of just really went away. And so I decided to just take that moment to pause and figure out what was my next thing to do. Then I decided to go back, and that's when I did sales, right? And so I did that. And then after about 2.5 years, I just didn't like the company that I was working for. I felt like it was not purposeful, and it was conflicting with the core of who I am, my integrity. And so what I did was my first real hand at entrepreneurship was being a contractor. And so what I did was I took my knowledge and I started teaching kids at home. So I did some in-home tutoring and then just trying to figure it out. And then that gave me flexibility to, be a part of Brooke's life, go to all the things at school. I ended up becoming a substitute teacher at her school just so that I could really be engaged. And then having all the knowledge that I had, it just really worked out in that way. And then after probably about, maybe a couple of years, I was really having a conversation with a friend, and she said to me, "Taren, you should sell your desserts." And it was the weirdest thing, because I had never thought in a million years, one, owning my own business, and then two, baking. I'm like, what? Like, it was the craziest thing that I could even ever imagine, but it resonated with the core of my spirit. And so I just really prayed about it. And I was just like, God, if this is the path that I need to take, I need you to really make it really plain and simple. And he totally did that for me. And so I knew then, and back in 2009, this was the road I needed to take. And once I started on that road, I haven't looked back. I've been going since August of 2009 on this journey.
So why did what she said resonate with you?
I don't know. I think part of it was because I really do love to bake. It really is. Cooking and baking is my thing. It's my therapy. And at the time, there really, entrepreneurship was just, especially in Cincinnati, people were really starting to talk about it. I only knew a handful of people who own businesses, and I figured I had nothing to lose, right? I was already kind of doing some consulting. I'm like, well, if I don't like that, and that's really how my brain works. If I don't like something, I would at least try it, and then I can do something else. I'm like, the worst case scenario is I'll go get a job, right? So that's just
the
really
right mentality. That's a great mentality.
And so I just thought, wow, that is so interesting that I would even consider that. And after that, Aaron and I, which is my husband, we had was getting ready to take an anniversary trip, and we went to San Diego. And it was so ironic because I hadn't shared this with anybody but Aaron. And my cousin who lives out there, they're huge dessert eaters. And so they had booked a place for us to go to, which is a dessert restaurant. So if you think of Cheesecake Factory and all they sell is dessert, it was incredible to see. And I was just like, wow, this is crazy that this has been spoken into my life. Then we go to this place and it just all started to make sense. And as we were on that trip, you know, my prayer was, okay, God, if I'm gonna do desserts, like what are we talking about? Like, what is my concept? You know, what's going to be the name of this business? Like all of those questions. And I kid you not, we were sitting in the Atlanta airport waiting to connect flights. And it just was like all downloaded. And I had to write it all out on a napkin. I was like, okay. And God speaks to me, but not in that way. It was the weirdest out of body experience. And when I started sharing it with Aaron, he was like, oh my gosh. And so what I realized, which I thought was a beautiful thing, it was like God has showed me. He had showed me, you have everything that you need to do this business. You have the discipline from being in the military. You have the background in corporate because that's what you did. You design websites. You understand numbers because you've done accounting. You know how to do pricing and all of that. And I was like, is this really my life? Like, is this who I am? And so it was amazing for me to really draw on my own skill set and my own strength. And I just started doing the research. At that point, it was do the research, figure out what who my customer base was going to be, and then how was I going to create these Sweet Petit desserts, right? So
I want to pause. I want you to pause for just a second. Don't lose that thought.
Okay.
So I heard you're saying a lot, and I think one of the things that you said that is very, very important for people who are listening and just people in general is you took stock of what you had, of your inventory.
Yes.
Right. So as you thought back to all of the things we talked about, Army veteran, exactly what you just said, all of those things, all of those experiences played a role in your ability to be successful now. Yes. So what do you tell people who think they don't have what it takes?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I tell people is, you know, obviously when I talk to entrepreneurs and they say to me, this is what they want to do, the first question I ask is, why do you want to do that? And can you see yourself literally doing this every single day? Because listen, I mean, as I've just shared with you, I'm good at a lot of things, but this thing right here stuck. And a lot of times we don't pay attention to what sticks. You know, what keeps you up at night? Like, is this thing going to keep you up at night? Are you going to be able to stay in that creative zone as you're doing it? Because if you're doing it for money, you're going to get burnt out very quickly. And especially if you're not making the money that you really want to make. And then two, usually you have everything that you need at that point in time to start your business. Is it going to be perfect? It is not going to be perfect. There were still some things that I was lacking. And then that's where you go and you find those people who can fill those gaps for you. But usually you have everything you need. And I will usually ask the question like, well, do you have experience in this? And what is that experience? And usually if people haven't realized it, they will uncover it themselves as we are having that conversation. And you just have to do it. You have to step out there and do it. Now, I will say it is the scariest thing ever to step out and do something, especially when you're used to making, say, you know, you're used to getting a paycheck every 2 weeks, right?
Right. Yeah.
And then so the other part of that is you have to make sure that you have the support that you need, because honestly, coming out the gate, probably for the first few years, you're not really going to be making that much money. And so money cannot be your driving force. It can't. You have
how did you sustain yourself during that time? Because that is the time when people will falter. Like, if God gave me this dream, if he gave me this vision, and he's Jehovah Jireh, and he's my provider, all the stuff, right? If he's that, why am I struggling? Why am I not making money? How do people get past that point?
Yeah, so I think it's a couple of things. So, and I'm going to be very transparent in my conversation. So I tell people, as much as I love Sweet Petit, if I had to do it over, I would not do it because of the struggle, right? And part of it is I only knew what I knew, you know, from a financial standpoint. I'm a very independent person, and I had to really talk to my husband and say, I need to do this on my own. And because I didn't want this business to be a burden on our, you know, on our family. And
Sure.
so he allowed me to do that. So with that came some struggle. Now, what I will say is I never faltered on any of my bills. I just did not have that excess. You know what I'm saying? So when you own a brick and mortar, it's really like having a mortgage because you have a lease to pay, you have all your utilities. If you have employees, you got to pay all that. You have insurances that you have to cover. So I was making money, but it was going out too, just as quickly as it was coming in. So, you know, I just, you know, really like to be upfront with people and say, hey, if you have X amount of debt, whatever that is, and you want to live a certain lifestyle or the lifestyle that you are living now, then you need to financially get yourself in a great space, because otherwise it's like you're working a job more or less. You're getting a paycheck and then it's just going out. So I mean, I'm blessed in that, you know, my credit is still good. I can, you know, get a loan from a bank, you know, because you will need a loan from a bank, and it's important that your credit is clean, you know, as you grow and want to scale up and do all those things. So, yeah, and I know that. I mean, I hear that too. You know, people get in this to make an income, but they fail to realize that, yeah, if you don't really know where your money is going to come from, I mean, anytime you do food, anything, I don't care if it's a restaurant, bar, whatever, it is so hit or miss. It is such a roller coaster ride. You can have a great 2 months, and then you can have a month that could really almost make you shut your business down. So cash flow is very critical. You have to really plan things out. You have, you know, and so you have to always be thinking, okay, how do I make more money? How do I reach more customers? And then also retaining the customers that have already come to you. How do I get that repeat business? So it's so many facets to it. But, you know, a lot of it I had to learn based off of experience, and I had to learn off the cuff, like, because I didn't have a person to go to really outside of, I had a couple of mentors, but even with them, they only know so much.
Right.
Now it's a whole lot better, because I know a lot of people like me that I can now bounce ideas off of. We can have those conversations, but 10 years ago, well, even 5 years ago, it was almost non-existent, or people just was not willing to share.
Yeah.
You know, people are very, you know, they're very territorial. They think that you're trying to take something from them. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, there's enough for everybody.
There's enough to go around. That's exactly right. So let's talk about the support structure, because that was going to be one of my questions, because I follow you, Taren.
Yeah.
And I know you've got and you do lots of great things. And guys, don't take my word for it. Pull her up on Facebook. Go to her website, which she'll give you more information on as we get done here at the end. But you do a lot of great things, and you have some wonderful connections. And you said early on you didn't have those connections. So I'm assuming that one tip you would give people is to get some type of network, some support network, when they, as early as they can in the process. But what's been your process, and how do they go about doing that?
Yeah. So, I mean, part of it is making sure that you connect in those circles that you want people to know who you are, right? So I didn't understand that at first. I mean, again, like I stated earlier, my first priority has always been my husband and my daughter, probably on the reverse. My daughter, then my husband.
We're moms, I know.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. We love them though.
We do. Yeah.
So there were a lot of events that I didn't attend because I just wasn't willing to compromise my family for my business. But what I noticed is the people that I serviced stayed with me. And then I figured out, like, I was kind of that passive person. Like, it finally clicked in my head, like, oh, you know this person. Or people came to me and they said, I want to introduce you to this person. And so building those relationships, which takes time. So I tell people too, with those relationships, good relationships, it takes time. It's not an overnight thing. And then when you're consistent in who you are, you gradually draw that to you. Mm-hmm. And so as I was gaining more momentum and making those connections, then I knew where to show up, right? Because sometimes people are all over the place and I'm like, well, why are you at this networking event why are you there? Mm-hmm. How is it going to benefit you? Then the other part to that is the events that, or networking events that I would go to, I made sure I knew who was going to be at those events because there's usually some type of a list. And then I made sure that I connected with the people that I needed to connect with in the room. Mm-hmm. So I was very
strategic.
Yes, mm-hmm. Because you don't have a lot of time. I'm like, I have 1 hour. Yeah. I have 1 hour and I need to meet these 3 or 4 people and I can only give them about 10 minutes. So I'm like pitching myself like right out the bat, whether it's, in direct correlation to my business or indirectly, just trying to get to know who they were. Yeah. So it dawned on me probably, gosh, maybe about 3 years ago, how many people I knew. And I'm like, man, I mean, because at that point, I'm starting to go places and people are knowing me. And I'm like, yeah. Oh my God.
I don't know you.
Yeah, I'm like,
I don't remember your name, right?
Did you come into the shop? Like, trying to place people.
Yes.
But, it has just been, it's been amazing. And it's so true when people say it takes about 5 to 7 years for people to know who you are. Mm-hmm. That is such a literal statement because as many people as you think know you, there are way more people that still don't know who you are. Mm-hmm. And so word of mouth has really been key to my success in this space. Just from the corporate events that I've done and all of the weddings and things like that. And so that has expanded my reach tremendously. Absolutely. And then obviously learning and figuring out how to use social media and all of those things. So yeah, it takes time. Relationships take time. I'm like, you don't date a guy one day and then you guys get married the next day.
Unless even the TV show is 90 days, right?
I know. I don't watch them because that's crazy.
I can't do that. That is craziness. That is craziness. Absolutely. Oh my God. So you said some wonderful things regarding networking, because networking is one of those nice words or dirty words, depending on who you're talking to. I personally, and I'm in the sales, right? I'm like, why do I hate this concept of networking? But you know what? Someone told me something. I don't remember who it was. Some wise person said, if you go into it with the mentality of finding out what that person needs, how you can help them,
that's it.
It's much easier. And that's the perspective that I take. Even when I think about guests for this, for this podcast, or even different things that I may do, I'm doing it because I'm like, hey, this gives them exposure. They might not need my exposure, but I know people that they don't know. So if I can help you share your message, get exposure to your new business, whatever that is, that's my way of networking. I don't make the time to go to networking events. Probably should.
Yeah.
But again, I think the mentality is what's important. It's that mentality. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, networking events, because they can be so intimidating, right? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how I feel. I'm like that introvert, extrovert person.
Ambivert. That's me.
Yeah. And so I do have to get out of my head. I have to tell myself, Taren, we're going in here to meet put the smile on the face.
Yes.
Speak to everybody, and then usually after I get past that, see somebody I know. It's usually me seeing somebody, then I'm totally out of my head, and then I can move in the room. But it's I think you either love it or hate it. I don't really know if there's a gray area when it comes to showing up at networking events.
Take a buddy. Take a friend.
Yeah. I usually drag Erin with me if I can, because she's Mr. Talkative.
Yeah, I couldn't take James with me because that he likes crowds less and less the older he gets. I'm like,
Oh,
it used to
yeah.
be my trusty sidekick. Now I've got to find a new sidekick. Oh my God. So how have so two things. I want to know what you did to help your business through COVID-19 and what
Yeah.
is still COVID-19. We're not completely out of it. But also, I'll think of my second question. I had a second question. So let's talk about that one
Okay.
first.
So yeah, so since COVID-19, oh my God, that's very interesting times. I went from having a full book, like literally, we actually kicked off the new year. It hasn't been slow for Sweet Petite.
Mm-hmm.
To a dead stop with many cancellations, and I'm thinking, what is happening? And so I really just like started thinking about, do I want to keep going with this business? Is this my out? And just figuring out how to like do something else, right?
Yeah.
But I just paused and I said, let me look at this as somewhat of a vacation, because we were running, like we were super busy. And so part of COVID has been great, because I feel like I've got a vacation that I will probably never see again.
Never get again.
But I did have to think about how am I going to pivot my business. And I've been able to do that. I've gotten a lot of community support where my business is located. I've been able to get some grant money. So, I mean, I know we'll be okay. My vendors have come back, so our book is steadily picking up.
Wonderful.
I'm trying not to go back to the totally insane, crazy person. I'm looking at hiring a person. I actually had somebody who was hired and then we couldn't hire them. So now I'm back to that, where I can possibly hire a person to really help. But yeah, the support has been great. I have been tremendously blessed, like during this time. I cannot tell you. And I know many people have suffered through this. I had a couple of scary moments when the riots were going on down in OTR, and thank God my space didn't get affected. But we're still there, and I know it's straight God that is really watching over me. If I don't know God, and I know God, I definitely know him.
Know him now.
I really do. I mean, I'm like, his hand is really resting, and it's resting on me, and it's resting on the business. And so I haven't had to really stress about that, but I have many concerns about so many other people who are, they are really, really struggling during this time. So yeah.
Your Sweet Petite Desserts is a very diversified business model. It's not just desserts. You've morphed even in the last year, I would say, that I've really been watching you. So tell us briefly all the different things that you have going on within Sweet Petite.
Yeah, so it's crazy. So I am doing a lot of, now we've kind of really switched our baking classes to an online platform. I'm kind of really working and tweaking that more. So I teach a lot of kids classes. So I'm in schools teaching classes. I'm doing them. I was doing them in the store. That is a whole separate business in itself. And so I really have to like get that nailed down. But I really do love teaching. That is my thing. So that's its own separate business. And then I have my vendors. So I have two big vendors, and one is Children's Hospital, and then the other one is Nordstrom. And they have really been huge supporters, even during this time. I'm like, it has just, I have so many stories just even about those two vendors, but they have been a huge support system. And actually working with them made me rethink my walk-in traffic. So we had just did away with our walk-in traffic at the beginning of March before COVID even was like, it's right here, right? Just because we were so busy with corporate events. I mean, I was getting hired to do like huge corporate events. And I'm like, this makes no sense for us to have walk-in traffic because it's so hit or miss.
Right.
We can sustain like literally off of vendors and events. And so those are those are kind of like our three buckets, the events, the vendors, and the baking classes. And we'll keep doing them for as long as we'll see how long it keeps going. And I'm looking at adding a fourth thing under this umbrella. And I think that will happen too. So as COVID kind of dissipates and we can see some, I don't know, normalcy, if you will. I don't know if that'll happen this year, but there are still some things on the horizon. My brain is.
I was about to, that was going to be my next question. What's next? Because you got this Sweet Petite kind of humming with this revised business model. You just opened Cream and Sugar Coffee House.
Yes.
And that's,
it's just that, that thing right there.
Like a true entrepreneur,
like, oh my gosh. Yeah. So like, even with Cream and Sugar, with me and my business partner, we could not have even begin to fathom how this thing would take off. We've only been open a week and 1 day. And we have done so much business. Like we've literally, if I look at the revenue that we've made from this week and 1 day compared to Sweet Petite, the revenue that we've made would be 2 months for Sweet Petite. That's how crazy. I mean, it's crazy. We're touching a minimum of 100 people a day. That's
and people
kind
are
of
giving
like,
you all great reviews.
Oh
I'm
my
looking
gosh.
and people are posting and that's the power of social media.
It is so insane. We've done so many interviews. We have so many, so many like photo shoots and things like that we need to do this month. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. And I know, again, this was a God thing. It wasn't meant for us to open in March. It was meant for us to open right now.
Because you were scheduled to open in March. You were just days away, as I recall.
We were, yes. We were a week. Well, like really like less than a week away from opening, and we decided to pull the plug because I was like, I don't think this will be good. And then people started canceling. Like we were supposed to have a ribbon cutting and all of those things. And when the city started pulling back and canceling, and the neighborhood community council started saying things, we were like, we better hold off. But it was a good time for us to pause too. Because even though we had spent some money, we'd actually kind of sort of recouped that by selling like all of our coffee. And now we're playing, oh my God, we're running 100 miles an hour. We're literally,
which is a good thing.
It is. And I know that this is part of, and that's the thing I try to explain to her was, when you are dealing with food, it's a whole different beast.
Yeah.
On top of the fact that we are a coffee shop. And I remember this phase with Sweet Petite for a while. It's just going to be interesting to see what our normal is going to be like, because our normal could very well be this, and that's okay as long as we're, we prepare for it. And the community needed us to be there, and we definitely have gotten a huge amount of support from the community. So that's so important to us. And even with the coffee shop, it's purpose-filled, it's intentional, and we will have a program for kids. Again, just teaching them entrepreneurship. We partnered with Xavier, so we have that relationship. So it's going to be a good thing.
I love it.
It's
I told you guys,
yeah.
inspiring, and I love it. You have all the characteristics of a great entrepreneur, risk taker, great background, diversity of skills, which is all important. But the key is everybody doesn't have to have those same skills. You
Right.
can be a little bit risk averse, but you still have to just move forward. And that's the key. That's the fear piece that we didn't spend a lot of time talking about. But just being willing, you got to do it afraid, as
That's
some other
it.
wise person said.
I say that all the time. You got to do it scared. Like
Hmm.
you got to do it. If God is nudging you to do it, you have
Yeah.
to do it because he's I always say he is with me right here and he's waiting for me on the other side.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can't lose. He's everywhere all at the same
All the time.
time.
All the
So
time.
he's walking with me and he's standing over there waiting for me to get to the other
Yes.
side. So
Yes.
I just keep that in my mind and I keep going. And then where I lack, because he knows the intent of your heart, and when he's giving this to you, he's going to meet you
Yes.
there. And so I'm always talking to him about, oh my gosh, Lord, just give me peace, give me grace, help me to continue to keep moving. And he has done it for almost 11 years with Sweet Petite. So I know he would do it with the coffee shop.
Hmm. He's
So,
got a track record, people. All right. Well, Taren, it has
yeah.
been a pleasure, and I knew the time would fly, but I want you to tell folks how to reach you, tell them your website, and whatever your final words are for folks.
Yeah, so I can be reached at info at sweetpetitedesserts.com, or you can reach me at info at creamandsugar.com. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for all three. So you can't miss me.
Can't
And
miss her.
then
You cannot
you,
miss her.
you can't miss me.
And if you miss her,
Um,
somebody tagged her, so you can't
yeah,
miss her.
right. You can't miss me.
That's a
And
perfect social media business model. Let me just take a moment. I know I'm well over time, but just watch the social media people, and that alone is a case study, all in and of itself.
it really
Okay,
is. It's
back
a
to
whole
Taren.
situation.
Back to Taren.
But yeah, I mean, I guess my final words would be, if God gave you the vision, he will make provision.
Mhm.
And that's it.
I
So
love
that,
it.
I think it's really that simple. You just,
Mhm.
if you're a willing vessel, he is going to see you through. And I am just a willing vessel. If he did it for me, and I know it sounds so cliche, he will do it for you, but it is the honest to God truth. If he did it for me, and I was a girl that wasn't even dreaming about being an entrepreneur, certainly he can do it for the ones who really are dreamers of
Mhm.
being entrepreneurs. So,
I love it. I love it. Well, Taren,
yay.
thank you so much for being my special
Christy.
guest. Yes, on the World According to Christy podcast. And thank you all for listening and or watching. Uh, don't forget to subscribe so that you'll get all of the latest updates on episodes as they come. I'm doing what I love. So I'll talk to you next time.